Hello, my name is Nelsonator,
And I'm Parish Torch.
and this is Let's Play Mega Man Battles Network 6 Cybeast Gregar. Last time, we, did a bunch of cool stuff. Totally, the greatest fun I've ever had in this game. And now it's time to, complete the requests. I've got 10 of them left, including this one that I've left for at least 10 episodes, where this guy has asked, "Hey, yo, can you show me the Poison Pharaoh program advanced?" And I had to wait for the entire game to be able to show it to him. But now, finally, we can put it together and show it to him. And it's been years since I recorded this footage, but I realized maybe I should have built a folder of just the star code so that I could, dig through my folder faster to get the chips I needed. Well,
Yeah, but then it would have taken a long time to undo it after the request was over, so...
see, but that's what two folders is for.
You just have the one experimental folder that you never use for anything else?
Yep. Yeah, but with a little bit of fast forwarding here, we can get to the fun stuff. So, I have 10 requests total on my list to do here. Most of them were added at the end of the game, but this one has been sticking around from the mid-game or so. One of the interesting things about Poison Pharaoh is they're reusing a graphic. I think they're reusing a graphic, but they're reusing a concept they made for Battle Network 1 with Pharaoh Man, who has not appeared in a game since Battle Network 2, where he was a secret boss. So, good on him for being able to make it into so many of these games just as a reference.
Mm-hmm.
Have you... Yeah, because Pharaoh Man shows up in Battle Network 1, 2, and then Network Transmission for whatever reason. And I think, like, in the anime, he was, like, he showed up to be a final boss of the first season or something like that, essentially.
Huh.
Yeah, they have a tournament arc, and at the end of the tournament arc, for some reason, he gets reawakened, and then he creates this massive pyramid that Mega Man and Proto Man go into to try to, like, stop him from taking over the internet or whatever. When they get to the point where they can beat him, World 3 Navies, Bomb Man and Stone Man, try to capture him, and then Mega Man gets sucked through to the World 3 base, and Lion's like, "Oh no, I can't send him any battle chips!" And then he's like, "Don't worry, I suddenly have the style change from Battle Network 2! And he goes Heat Guts, and then he beats the two of them. Which, like, was weird to me as a kid, because it didn't quite work like that, you know? Like, they're still hard fights. But, alright, if the game wants to do, if the anime wants to do it that way, they can do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely see that concept a lot, where, a concept like that is just treated as a generic power-up, rather than when you play in the game, it's definitely part of a type advantage rock, paper, scissors type matchup that,
Yeah.
hey, it has certain strengths and weaknesses, and if you can capitalize them, or it makes sense for this situation, then you can exploit that extra power or ability it has. But yeah, so much of the time it's just treated as like, oh, I'm basically the equivalent of Super Saiyan now. I'm just better and stronger, and the power of Heat Guts will allow me to beat Pharaoh Man. How? Don't question it.
Well, what really helped him do it is he did the flamethrower on one hand, and then the other thing is, like, Heat Guts is really made to demonstrate that power because the right arm gets super big and armored up, so, like, Mega Man's been doing bicep curls for, like, a year or something and nothing else. So, like, yeah, you look physically intimidating. It's pretty great. But then some of the other ones where it's like, oh, Mega Man's had to go to the moon and we have to deal with, like, the transmission lag of the distance between the Earth and the moon. And the way they solve it is he gets Aqua Custom, which somehow alleviates the lag, which isn't possible, I think? Huh? And then there's a point where Mega Man needs to fly, in the internet, and he gets Elect Team, and then gets to, like, slot Glide into Elect Team, so he gains Glide's wings to fly around or something like that. And then I don't know what was up with Wood Shield, because I, like, stopped watching at that point. So, the show is a mystery, but in that time, we have completed, a request, not enough members, where the band guy is like, hey, I need some musical instruments to back me up. Let's get some viruses. Hey, man, you got the virus chips? And I'm like, yeah, man, here you go. And he's happy. Now it's time to track a criminal. I like how even they're able to move the, important NPCs for this quest by you just kind of going off screen. Like, you don't go through a loading zone. They're still here, but they're still able to move the guys around. And usually that'd be accomplished by hitting a loading screen, triggering something else, and then coming back. Also, I love how there's just, weird pipe stuff back here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, my favorite part of seeing a quest like this is the fact that, they're still sticking with the series, character limit conventions for naming. Just as a matter of fact of trying to reduce, how many characters they had to encode for key item phrases. But yeah, just imagining this cop telling you, like, oh yeah, this guy stole our secret data.
Secret data. Yeah. It's also finally time to walk around to this area of Central 2 here, which goes all the way and connects to Aquarium 3. Also, this is a virus encounter that is not messing around. An SP support virus is pretty scary to see alongside the Dark Mech, but we've seen, the Dark Mech in the Undernet and the Gunner 3 in the Pavilion Comp 4, which is the last one before Gregar. So, yeah, not too hard. Also, I like how both of the guys fall over defeated when we only beat one guy's set of viruses. I guess the other guy knew better than to, try and put up a fight.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it really feels like the series convention should have been you have 2 fights in a row.
Yeah. So, the 3 Navi chips we get here are from, I'm gonna put quotation marks around this, but the friend Navis. Colonel is pretty good because he hits a massive area of the field for that 160 damage. It's that Z-shaped pattern he's got for his sword throw, beam, whatever. It's called Screen Divide, but yeah. And then Proto Man is always good, where he just hops in front of a guy and slashes. If you've got multiple viruses in the same column, he can probably hit both of them if they're standing right next to each other, so there's good ways for him to increase his damage. And, of course, all 3 of these are in the star code, so you can splash them into any folder and kind of roll with it.
Speaking of roll...
Yeah, she's here. 60 damage is not nearly enough at the end of the game, even when she heals 60. The strongest recovery that's in the asterisk code is recover 80, which is still more than she heals. So, not nearly as much an auto-include as the other 2 when you're just kind of, running around on the internet, but she's there.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I first started the series, thinking that roll was one of the best chips ever. It's attack and, recover. Like, offense and defense. What more could you want?
Yep.
But then, yeah, slowly as I got better at the game and discovered not just more chips, but got better at playing, more strategies, etc., realizing that, yeah, it's probably just better to do more damage and, limit the ability for enemies to hurt you in the first place by getting rid of them.
Yep. Or you use a defensive chip that makes it so that you won't take damage. A barrier, a invisibility, any of those.
Life aura.
Well, it's gonna be a long time before you get that one. Especially depending upon the game too, where in the first game, it was going to be the last chip that you got guaranteed, because it could only be obtained after you got all of the other chips. Which, yeah, you wouldn't have played the first game, right? I want
Nope.
you to. So how much do you know about Mega Man Battle Network 1?
Very little. I think I had the plot summarized at one point.
Okay.
But...
So, do you know what the final boss of the first Battle Network game is?
Was it the first one that's Gospel, or was that second?
That's the second one. In the first game, it's the Life Virus. So,
yes.
Whenever they say Life Aura, it is referring to this boss and its defensive capability. once you
Which was later repurposed as the Scuttler or Scuttlest virus family, right?
it would summon the Scuttler family to defend it during the final boss fight. And then they just sort of spun off to become their own little guys wandering around. Because even though the life virus was gone, it still created enough little guys to still hang out after it was gone. But the other thing that... Actually, the follow-up might be the proper explanation for why it happened. You get an email after the game is complete where somebody's like, yeah, it turns out somebody accessed the World 3 database and stole, like, part of the life virus data before it got completely blown up. Who could have done that? I don't know. Once you collect every other chip in the game, you can fight Base, where he looks notably different from any of the other games because he's extremely, like, in shadow dark black. But he stole the life aura data and made his own. That's why in Battle Networks 2 and 3, he has the life aura as his primary defensive option, and the Scuttle virus shows up in the World 3 area in 2, which is where Base is hanging out, and then they show up in the secret area in Battle Network 3, which is where he's recuperating his strength. So maybe that's why those viruses are there, because they're spinning off from Base's stolen life virus healing ability. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely remember the life aura that he had in the fight in Battle Network 3. And just, trying to, keep enough strong damage chips to be able to get rid of it, and then keep the damage on so that he couldn't put it back, or the one copy of North Wind that you managed to put in your folder if all else fails.
Yeah, the part of the problem with Base in Battle Networks 2 and 3, so this isn't a problem in the first game, because, or maybe it is, I don't know, but in the first game, I found out that once you broke through Base's life aura, he wouldn't put it back up. So it was just a one and done thing. But in 2 and 3, it's sort of a tempo game where you need to be able to dish out stronger attacks that will make him flinch anytime he goes to do his bigger attacks, so that you can, like, knock him back and stop him from putting the aura back up. But a lot of times what I'd like to do... Oh, hello, Giga Cannon 3, yet again. Goodbye, Dive-Man. But what I'd like to do in Battle Network 3 is I build a combo-type deck, where it'll be, okay, I will drop the North Wind, and then I will drop a Navi chip that's been boosted to hell, that will eliminate almost all of your HP in a single go. And then, even if you do put the aura back up, well, I have a second North Wind, and I have Navi Recycle in my folder, so I can just sweep through you. I don't have a problem with this. But that's not necessarily, like, the best way to do it, per se. I'm not exactly an God, just clown on Blast Man. One of the things I like to do when I'm playing this game is just open up the opportunity to fight Blast Man SP as soon as I can, because getting access to the Train Arrow chips in the aquarium area is enough to really just completely wreck his day. And if you're playing Falzer, you can get an S rank on him by just charging the Train Arrow chips with Spout Cross and unloading on him, and he just can't do anything. So that's always fun, bullying Blast Man.
I don't know, you're beginning to sound like one of the World 3.
Can I really be, though, when he's in World 3? Okay, well then again, I guess World 3 infights with itself in this game, so maybe it's alright. So yeah, that was refights there. They're just sort of reintroducing these bosses to you, which is going to be a thing they do later, in, like, refights that come back for the, that end up in the graveyard, or just getting you ready for, chasing down the SP Navis so that you can, fill out your Mega Complete. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think I've done Mega Complete by this time in my recording, and, it's one of those things where you have to spend a good amount of time just kind of hunting over the internet, like, where'd they go? God, what's the... I'm going to send us back, like, decades at this point, but what was the line from The Dark Knight Rises where it's like, where's Lisa? Where is she?
Oh gosh, Rachel, I think is her name.
Where's Rachel? Yeah, that sounds right. I can't... Maybe I shouldn't be talking over, like, this kid trying to fix his parents' marriage with, like, weird things I remember from decades ago. The Dark Knight Rises of all things.
I thought you were going to go in a completely different direction and reference the College Humor or Funny or Die. One of those two that put out the Batman videos. Batman is just an idiot.
I have no idea what you're talking about. This is new to me.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a series of videos starring Pete Holmes and a couple other, like really good, talented comedians who are just making fun of the Batman movies. Some of the things are like things about the series that are stupid, and some of them are, man, wouldn't it be funny if Batman was straight up just an idiot? And they kind of blend the line between those two things. Like, there's a whole video starring Patton Oswalt as the Penguin, and Batman is taking out a bunch of his guards with like batarangs and like wrist blades or whatever. He's like, I don't kill people. I'm like, Batman, what you just did to that man. So like kind of poking fun at some of the things in the series that are kind of untrue when you really think about it. Like, no, I didn't kill that guy. I just gave him a concussion and then left him on the floor unattended for hours. I bet he lived.
Yeah, totally fine. What I am going to sort of interrupt to point back to here. So, tulips are the flowers that this kid is going to get to give to his parents to patch things up. In the language of flowers, tulips symbolize love, perfect and deep love. So, that's a hell of a thing to drop when the parents are in the middle of this sort of discussion.
Wow.
I thought talking to the kid would be the thing that really starts this up, but no, you just talk straight to the parents. I thought I remembered these guys. Oh, I guess this could have a happy ending. I thought they broke up after this. Well, I guess I misremembered. Showing a flower of perfect and deep love is going to keep you together. Great.
His line of dialogue was kind of sad there. Just, Tulip might have what hitched my parents, but I'm what holds them together. Like, that's not usually the sign of a good marriage when people say they're in it for the kids.
Yeah, or for the kid to even recognize it. Or at least speak about recognizing it, because kids will internalize this sort of thing immensely. Like, oh, it's my fault that mom and dad are fighting, which I guess that's why he's asking us to go get the tulip in the first place. But still, man. Something sad about that kid.
Also, I kind of tuned it out just because it happens so often in the game, but it just really struck me again when you accepted that request and a message came up with Mega Man saying, Lan, there's an email. Let's check out the email.
Wow, email.
Like, it's the same kind of thing as when I do something and my phone immediately has a notification. Like, I make a payment with my credit card, and then I get a notification from my bank app that a payment was made on your card at this place. I'm like, yes, I know, I'm there. Like, but the way Mega Man and Lan talk about it, it's as though this email could be about anything. It's like, Lan, we just got an email. And I'm really surprised that Lan doesn't say, yes, Mega Man, I know. I just accepted a request. I just did that.
Well, okay.
I was there.
It's about the world we live in, right? Where now we all walk around with cell phones, and it was like, it's totally average to get an email after we do a thing, right? But back in the times when this game came out, people would have, like, flip phones and stuff, and they'd send text messages back and forth. They wouldn't necessarily get, like, emails on their phones. That didn't become, like, Like, pagers were a thing at the time. I mean, they still are in many hospital systems, but remember getting, like, a page? Man, that sure was a thing. But in the time since these games came out, I'm going to peg it for, like, when the iPhone came out, the first one, when you could get your email wherever you were on that little thing that was in your pocket. That came out in 2007. That was, like, a year after Battle Network 6 came out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 2 years after Battle Network 6 came out, to put it in perspective. So, these kids getting an email when they do anything? That's hot stuff!
Yeah. I guess part of it is also my understanding that in Japan, where this is localized from, email and text messages kind of blend together a lot more than they do now. People talk about, like, I'll send you a mail or I'll mail you.
Yeah.
And to text someone, you basically typing in an email address, the subject line and everything.
Huh.
So yeah, that's kind of the part that, you know, really gets to me about the whole process. Is it's not more like what you're thinking of, like, wow, I can check my email from my phone. It's more like, oh my god, I got a text.
Whoa!
Like, yeah, like, I get it. I know.
The most important thing I ever could have gotten. A text message! Also, I guess I'm gonna point out there that the Dark Mechs are weak to the cursor chips, which is good for Gregar teams. But the Dark... excuse me. I think the Dark Mechs are also weak to breaking chips. There's a way to break the sensor on the front of their eyes so they can't fire the paralysis shots anymore. And so they'll just kind of hang out on their side of the field. They'll move 2 squares, they'll try to fire it and do nothing. So they just kind of sit around, hang out, not do anything. Oh, hello, rare Dark Mech.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, look at that big boy. The Dark Mech is incredible in the Virus Battler, which we're gonna get to next episode, I think. And being able to see one at all is pretty good.
Yeah, I definitely thought it was a little odd that cursor was a, you know, element in the game.
Yeah. When they had to come up with elements for Battle Network 4 that they were going to build the Soul Unisons around, like, cursor sort of made sense because of the Magnum chip in the previous games, but then they were like, okay, what are we doing with Rick? No, I'm wrong. Cursor didn't come about until 5, where it replaced hiding.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because Magnum was previously, I think, in the braking line, and then it moved over into cursor. And they also introduced Circle Gun in that game, and I think it was just, like a regular chip. And then they were like, hey, wait a minute, this is a good idea. We should bring it back and make it cursor. Yeah, anyway, goodbye, Grandma. I guess she was a ghost too. Anyway, Number Open is here. It is extremely powerful because having access to a third of your folder at any given time is extremely powerful. There will be a point where I redo my Navi Customizer. I probably won't use it because I prefer a different setup, but Number Open is extremely powerful, and you can get this request, I think, at the end of the game or right after Gregar, and there's a lot of reason to just immediately slap it in and stop thinking about doing anything else. So, like, I looked at the support chip and I was like, maybe later. I want to do everything else first.
Mr. Famous.
Mr. Famous! Just right there in the top right corner of the screen. So we're gonna walk past him, catch the train where he's probably, like, a car ahead of me or maybe across the aisle, and then we're gonna get to the same place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to imagine that you took the request. The same thing happened, you know, as Mega Man saying, hey, Lan, you've got an email. But, you know, with Mr. Famous's Navi telling him, hey, Mr. Famous, you've got an email. He checks it, sees Lan walking for the door, and during that blackout moment, as you're transitioning from inside to outside, he just bolts past you.
Runs all the way there. Yeah, the other interesting thing about Mr. Famous in this game is that he does not bring a Navi. I think this is the only game Mr. Famous shows up in where he doesn't have one. He first shows up in 2, where he's got Gate Man, which... in 3, he has Punk. In 4, he has Kendo Man, who I think won a Navi design contest alongside Video Man and, Burner Man or Laser Man. It was Laser Man. So Kendo Man, Laser Man, Video Man, and then in Battle Network 5 he has Grid Man, which is designed after a football player. But then here in Battle Network 6, he just doesn't have one. He just says hello. So I did just mention the number open, but last episode I got the bug stop, and now it's time to put it to use by reconfiguring my Navi customizer. This setup is not ideal per se, but I want to try out auto recover to see if it will heal me in between battles in the multi-battle survival gauntlet here. This is a 20 battle gauntlet, and just being able to slap in all these points of healing in a single battle is probably going to be good for me. So my final setup here is going to have custom +2, fast first barrier, auto recover, undershirt, fully maxed out buster, and a little bit extra HP as a little sauce on top. There are other setups that will be more powerful, but for I think this is one I might have put together when I was, a young kid, and it works fine enough for this, so I'm just gonna roll with it, and it'll probably be fine. So, 20 battles is obviously a lot to do in a row. I think the game's maxed out at 30 for how many they were gonna give you, but considering they start this week, not a problem. I cleared these battles with a single chip. Come on, how hard could this be? But now we're starting to add level 2 navies, or level 2 viruses, but it won't be too bad. What multi-chain virus battles do you remember from, back in some of the other games you played?
I remember doing some of it at the, very, very end of the post-game in 3. I think there was some part of you getting to Serenade that, required you to fight a bunch of very strong virus battles. Maybe I'm misremembering that.
There would be monoliths in the secret area that you had to smash with a hammer that you would get from Undernet 7. And once you would do that, you would be thrown into a virus battle immediately. And there were a couple of them strewn around the secret area, protecting stuff in the back. But the one that is most memorable, I think, is a Survival 20 that is off an invisible hidden path in Secret 3 that guards the hub batch Navi customizer part. And that's, the longest one in that game. I can't remember if it's 20 or if it's 30, but it's the longest one in that game. Battle Network 2, I think, had a survival gauntlet of 30 for its, biggest post. So one of the things you did in Battle Network 2 as you were going through it is you would collect, you had to be a licensed net battler to do things hey, I want to go to another country's internet, and they're like, "Aw, kid, you gotta pass the bar exam with the city net battler crews to prove that your Navi's capable of going there." So you had to rank up, and the highest rank available was triple S, and it would that was only useful in the World 3 area. I don't know why the security. Okay, I know exactly why the security was so tight there, because Wiley's a paranoid man, so I guess that makes sense. But why does it tie into, an accreditation I can get down at City Hall? That's the thing that doesn't make sense to me. But,
yeah.
There was a 30 survival battle to achieve the SSS license in that game. Battle Network 4 had survival battles of 10 for the quote-unquote evil chips, which were not dark chips. No, these ones were totally different. They were, Batline, Anubis, and something else I cannot remember. But they were required for Mega Complete, and so that you could access, the deepest area of the post-game area. So, that's fun. And then, I don't remember 5 at all. I blocked it from my memory, so when the Legacy Collection comes out, I'll be able to see it again. I'm going to look on the bright side for that, because I'm not a big fan of Battle Network 5.
Are they at least bringing back the DS version of 5, or is it going to be more like the Game Boy Advance one?
We don't know yet.
Hmm.
The Thankfully, you don't really need 2 screens for Battle Network 5, but I don't know how they would replicate the functionality of putting one of the Battle Network games in the second slot, so that you could get the ability to like do whatever it was they were going to do, right? Because when you were in Liberation missions, depending upon what game you had slotted into the Game Boy Advance slot, it would power up a different Navi that you were running through the Liberation mission with. The Battle Network 1 would power up whoever the team leader was, Colonel or Proto Man. Battle Network 2 would power up the Defensive Specialist, Magna Man or Nightman. Battle Network 3 would power up the Stealth Navi, Gyro Man or Shadow Man. Battle Network 4 would power up the Attack Navi, Tomahawk Man or Napalm Man. 4.5 Real Operation, which did not come out in the United States or anywhere outside of Japan, powered up the data processing Navi, Number Man or Search Man, and then Battle Network 5 would power up the healing Navi, Medi or Toad Man. Having Battle Network 5 in the second slot would also allow Base Cross, which was a really fun transformation to always have access to, on top of the abilities that would be granted to any of the styles that were in that game. But meh, that if you weren't in a Liberation mission, you were rocking Battle Network 5 so that you could have the Base Cross, because it was really fun. And then I think you could put a Boktai game in and get Django Cross, I think. But I didn't own any of those games, so I never got to see it.
Yeah, I can't say I ever owned any of the Boktai games either, but from a historical perspective, I do think it's fascinating that it's one of the few video games that I can remember whose main gameplay, was rendered obsolete by newer hardware.
Yeah.
There are lots of games that, were functionally unplayable on newer hardware because they changed this or that or something else, but just nothing about the game has necessarily played, but just the fact that the hardware changed around it and made it much more difficult to accommodate.
Yeah.
Not impossible, but you just have to find a spot where you can hang upside down with your SP.
Yeah. I was wondering what you were going to talk about specifically, for the emulation challenge, or if you were going to talk about how the Game Boy Advance SP was radically redesigned and put the game card on the underside of the game console instead of sort of at the top of it, so that the light sensor was in the opposite direction of where you could get sunlight. But you answered the question for me.
Yep.
Making my job easy. Thanks.
Although, yes, it is interesting whenever you have any sort of physical hardware-based, interaction with a gameplay mechanic, how that, changes for emulation and, across different hardware. Because a lot of times people think of emulation, and the first thing that comes to their mind is, people trying to pirate your devices, but even legal emulation has to take that into account. When some of the Game Boy Advance games were originally released on the Wii U, and they had to come up with ways to give you, the chips that you could only get via net battling, like you were talking about last time.
Yep. Or, Skyward Sword, Legend of Zelda, where that game had very tightly integrated motion control capabilities, and they had to come up with a way to be able to play that game with a twin stick controller.
Yeah,
not easy.
Yeah, there are definitely some times where adapting or changing it for newer hardware improves the game. I know a lot of people who are very fond of the what's the series called? It was the Wii Classics series or something, where they took a bunch of GameCube titles and ported them over to the Wii and added motion controls.
Okay.
So they did that with Pikmin. I want to say that Mega Man was technically part of that same process, or gimmick, Metroid Prime
Well, Metroid
But yeah,
Prime
there were
is
several.
interesting because we just got the remaster or remake or whatever they're calling it for Metroid Prime on Switch. And
Hmm.
that game's default control scheme is a twin stick thing, like a modern control scheme, instead of the like semi-tank controls that game you had when it launched. And
Yeah.
granted, that's from an era where we hadn't quite figured out twin stick shooters, right? Like Halo was sort of the one to set that standard, but it was still really messed up compared to what we currently have. Where basically the only thing it got was the twin stick shooters. But Metroid Prime, like, you would move with the control stick, but when you press forward, you'd walk forward, and when you press left or right, you'd sort of turn that way, and pressing back would sort of pull you backwards. So controlling which way you were going was not the easiest sort of thing. And then the R button would lock you looking in a direction so that when you moved around on the joystick, you would move, like, if I held right on the joystick, I would walk right
You
on
would
the...
strafe.
Yeah. And then you could lock onto enemies on top of that to keep you doing things, and that was extremely important. And I think that was on the
Yeah,
L key?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like the control scheme is definitely designed around locking on to enemies' points of interest in the environment and moving relative to those things that you're looking at. And it worked well for that, but yeah, then people got a little bit frustrated with trying to navigate around, regular areas, just traversing the environment.
Yep. Which in a 3D platformer, which, you know, maybe that's not like the main thing of Metroid Prime, but it's certainly a core aspect of it. And there were definitely times I fell all the way down to the bottom of some of those big vertical rooms because I couldn't quite tell where I was jumping. Yeah, it was a problem.
Hmm.
Yeah. Did you ever play the Metroid Prime games? Or was that just
I
me?
played a little the first one, but
Okay.
yeah, definitely not make my way all the way through the series.
Yeah, because I played through all three of them, but it's been at least a decade, right? So it's one of those things where, like, oh yeah, Dread came out and I liked playing that game, so I was like, maybe I should go back and play Metroid Prime again. And I never did. And now they released a remaster and, like, oh yeah, Metroid Prime 4 is coming. And I'm like, maybe I should go back and replay those games.
Now you have the excuse and the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the game that really got me into the Metroid series was Metroid Fusion.
Yep.
And then I went back and played, Super Metroid and the Samus 2 remake when that came out, a couple
Yep.
others in between. But yeah, I've really only played the side-scrolling 2D Metroid games.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to remember what I think about the Metroid Prime games because they came out at a time where, like, I'm pretty sure I was in grade school for one of them because I remember showing another kid the final boss of that game and he was just not having it at all, and I was getting frustrated because I was struggling with the boss and he wasn't happy because he didn't want to, like, watch a game be played in front of him, which totally understandable, but yeah. I think there might have been a point where we ended up in a fight and I, like, smashed his nose in with a headbutt. Man, it's fun to be kids, alright?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so anyway, this fight. This is only like a 7-round virus encounter, I think. It's not nearly as hard as the 21 because it's a shorter chain, but it's harder because the viruses are stronger, if you catch my drift. I also like how
Yeah,
there's a
I
theme
was going to
of...
say it did seem to ramp up in difficulty faster.
Yeah, I also like how, since this is the Mafia we're fighting, they frequently use the big hat viruses to be like the mafioso henchmen or whatever. So this chain of fights is a lot easier if you have what's the word I'm looking for here? If you have the fast barrier or the first barrier, so that you're not affected by the flash of light that's going to hit you there, so that you can fight the viruses regular style, but then you have to, not lose your barrier so that you can continue to take advantage of it. Which, can be a little bit of a problem with the heady viruses.
Yeah. Yeah, especially multiple of them locking down entire rows of the battlefield.
Yep. Yeah. Am I finally going to demonstrate Bugrei's sword? Am I finally going to demonstrate this Giga Chip that is awful and I hate it? Yeah,
I don't know how you could hate it.
Bugrei's sword will consume a single bug frag every time you swing it, but it changes your charge shot for the rest of the battle to be a life sword sized swing. I do not remember how much damage it does. I think it's tied to how strong your buster is, but as you can see there, I just burned 2 bug frags to swing it twice, and I missed one of them in a game where I struggled to get all of the bug frags I could need to buy the Bugrai Sword Giga Chip in the first place. So, I'm not particularly happy with the Bugrai Sword Giga Chip, if you catch my drift.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that was a lot more useful back in Battle Network 3 when they didn't have the full synchro system.
Yeah.
And countering enemies would get you, numbers of bug frags at the end of every battle.
Yeah, you could get 8 per battle per virus encounter if the encounter was set up right, and you could get 10 for navies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that. It really made you feel benefit to trying to counterattack and catch your opponent off guard, even as you're doing the Navi Ghost, refights around the net.
Yep. It's a thing that rewards your investment in learning how to play the game better. And that's a really good loop that Battle Network 3 has going on inside itself. So yeah, that's the Road to the Soul Battlers quest there. I wrote down what a lot of these anytime you get a key item from one of these quests, it'll contain a number trader code, which, those aren't gated by completing the game or not, so you can just look them all up online and plug them in. So I've already done that. Which, the first time you're playing the game, this next one we're going to do here, Negotiate, this would be a good one to do, early, as soon as you get it, because it gives you the code for spin yellow from the Navi Customizer. So that bug stop that I've been moving around and wiggling about, that is one of the ones that you can rearrange however you like. Yellow is a pretty common color, as I remember, so it would be really nice to have that early in the game, but no, you get it here at the end of the game. Unless you wrote down the Navi, the number trader code, and you just slap it in. Woo!
I did think it was kind of interesting when I saw you getting one earlier, but the conversation moved on.
Yeah.
With the codes like that, you can definitely look them up and just enter them and have a little bit more power than you otherwise would right at the start of the game. But I did like that you could also find the information in game for people who weren't looking this up or didn't have lots of friends who they could cross-reference information on. Because again, as you point out, the series ended in the early 2000s, so there weren't a ton of internet forums and lists of these kind of things.
Yeah,
there definitely were, but
yeah, back in the day, I used GameWinners.com. Does that website even still exist anymore? I don't entirely know. And I found GameFAQs pretty soon after, which, this game series is 20 years old, and there are facts that were written 20 years ago that are still up on there. Man, GameFAQs is incredible. But yeah, the one you probably saw earlier was for Charge Max, which is a Navi Customizer part that I'm currently using. So, yeah.
So, I went to GameWinners.com. They stopped operations in 2017.
Ah!
Yeah, the only thing on the website now is a landing page that just says GameWinners.com, 1995 to 2017. And then 5 paragraphs of explanation. Just talking about it is with a sense of sadness, we quit. The community has formed many friendships. But then there's a section called, I still need game help. What can I do? And they basically say, the gaming and internet have changed so much. Just try YouTube, Twitch, Game facts, IGN. I don't know. Not literally in those words, but that's kind of the vibe. Just like
Okay, but
there's so many other places to find help now.
I will give them credit for mentioning that they put themselves on the Wayback Machine, if you really want to go there. Also, how they've, like, moved on their associated communities to Reddit, Facebook, and Discord. I could go on the Game Winners Discord if I really wanted to do a thing.
Yeah.
But if you would really like that forum-based contact once again, please join this guy's website at website.com. Oh no, what's going to happen if I shouldn't click that in the middle of a recording session because I might run into a problem where, like, maybe that's malware or something, but, yeah.
Tying back into an earlier conversation we were having about emulation and hardware changes, the Wayback Machine is a great example of how some things can be preserved on there, like, posts about help and walkthroughs for games, a list of, say, the number trader codes. But there are some things that, due to the technology not functioning anymore, like Flash,
Yeah.
Is very hard to archive and preserve.
Yeah. Newgrounds.com.
And so yeah, that's one of the things that I'm always aware of with technology being retired or shuttering its doors. How are we going to preserve this for future generations? Because sure, there isn't a ton of historical value or great significance to every Flash animation on Newgrounds, but at the same time, there are some on there that make people laugh, that inspired people to go on and make their own version of something, or
okay,
I could do that but better.
I just want to hit you with a blast from Newgrounds, right? So, I think I remember the first Newgrounds thing I ever interacted with was these guys who made a series of videos called The Decline of Video Gaming.
Mm-hmm.
I googled, like, decline of games videos, and I got a YouTube video, and the description is, created by Super Flash Bros, now known as SFB Games. Yes, the same team that made snipper clips for the Switch.
Wow.
Yeah!
Good for them.
Yeah, that's a hell of a thing to learn.
Yeah, I've played through just about every level in that game, and I had a blast with it. That was a fantastic Switch launch title, too, because so many of the other launch titles were definitely single-player focused games. You had Legend of Zelda at launch, Mario Odyssey very soon after launch, and technically there's a two-player mode where the other person plays as Cappy, but very few people are going to want to play as Cappy, in my opinion. So yeah, Snipper Clips was a great game to show off to people what the system could do. I brought it over to someone's house, set up the little kickstand on the table, handed them a Joy-Con, and said, okay, here we go, we're going to play this puzzle game together.
Yeah. Sometimes it's interesting to learn about people that you did know in the past or, like, paid attention to when they were content creators, so that's a good ending. That's pretty good. Well, I mean, they're probably still making games, right? They gotta be. I'm not going to look now. When I come back to this video in 20 years, I'm like, oh man, I wonder if they're still doing stuff. Then I'll look, but not now.
Yeah, I remember getting into a conversation recently with a friend about Aaron Hansen, Egoraptor from Newgrounds.
Yeah.
And, what he's up to now, kind of thing. For some reason, it pulled up an article on the Newgrounds wiki describing, Aaron Hansen, aka Egoraptor, and all the things he's done. And they included a line like, oh, he's the subject of much controversy after, making remarks about, the Newgrounds community and super fans, whatever. Like, yeah, like, even as someone who is super active on Newgrounds, I definitely get where comments like that could come from. It's just people on Newgrounds back in the day kind of had a type.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, we say people on Newgrounds, but, like, when I think of people who are on that website, I think it was, like, teens and kids, right? And, like, you're putting it
Mhm.
on in that level of like teen pose or whatever. Like that's the image I associate with that site.
Yeah, the same way that everyone edgy as a teenager or edgier than the rest of their life.
Yeah. Before they kind of realize, this is stupid. I'm embarrassed by this. I was cringe and now I'm an adult and I must repent.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, hey, as a wise person once told me, feeling cringe when you look back at your actions of the past means that you've grown since then.
Yep. Yep. So, we haven't mentioned, like, the hostage crisis at all, but, man, this guy really makes us run around, huh? Deep into the Undernet, then into here, the green area, and then he's gonna send us into the judge tree to pick up the hostage before finally chasing him down deep into the Mr. Weathercomp again, so that we can pick a fight with him. It's... I get that you can do this once for a request, but man, it's annoying.
Also, I did enjoy that the description of the item was, you can't do the something rude. Don't do the something rude.
Like, there are always parts in games where, like, okay, we looked over all of this stuff that was super important, and we did, like, a rough pass on this other stuff, and we'll come back to it later, we promise. And that never comes back to there. I ran into that with a game I played recently, Super Robot Wars X. You know, you're going through this entire game, and it's, like, tens of thousands of words of, like, intersecting anime plots with a whole bunch of proper nouns, and you have to nail how each character speaks so that it sounds like what they were in the anime, right? You have to convey all of this through text. And, you know, it's doing pretty good. It's doing pretty great until I get to, like, one or two maps from the end of the game, and I've got to run over to the Eiffel Tower, and then I get this awfully, like, worse than Google translated text for what these guys are doing at the base of the Eiffel Tower as they're salvaging parts. And it's just like, man, it's so good everywhere else, but then I notice, like, this rough translation that, like, in 100,000 words, I can see how you'd miss this one line that QA might never see because it's buried in a weird spot, but it doesn't make me feel great about seeing it.
Yeah, and then there's the opposite approach where an entire game, translation could be so bad that it makes the experience good again.
All your base are belong to us.
Yeah, classic example with, what was that, Zero Wing?
They put a version of Zero Wing out on Steam recently, and it doesn't include that version of Zero Wing where it has the messed up text.
What's the point?
Right?
Not just, like, because I find the, translation and text-to-speech jargon so funny, but also, if that's how people remember it, wouldn't that be the version that you want to have in your storefront?
The one that was capitalized into memedom by something awful, like incubating and launching one of the first internet memes, if not the first internet meme. Like, it probably wasn't the first, because that was probably, like, the hamster dance or something like that. But, like, it's up there. It's pretty old.
Yeah. It's still amazing to think back to some of those old classic memes and how, now
this was all that was required to be a meme.
Memes retire now, like, after a month? People accuse you of, like, oh, that's a dead meme. Like, what? No, memes don't die.
Sometimes
they keep going forever.
For days. And then we get stuff like, we're just going to reuse the soy jacks, or, like, the rage faces, or whatever. It's, oh my... It's crazy to see people trying to be like, yeah, all of our Wojaks are just like what the rage faces were back in the day. We need to bring those back. And then you sit about it and think for a bit, and you're like, I remember when rage faces were hot a decade ago.
Yeah, I remember the subreddit, which was like 7Fs.
Yeah, that rage face.
Yeah, but like the subreddit specifically was 7Fs 12Us or something. And just there were so many people that were talking about, having been on the internet long enough to have memorized exactly how many F's and U's it is to navigate to that subreddit. Just yeah, that was one of the few things that came up an example of like what don't today's generation understand. That wasn't something like, oh, remember when we used floppy disks? Remember radio antennas? And then yeah, that one was actually just, hey, remember rage faces? Like, oh my god, it pains me to think that the children of today might not actually know what that means.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. God, like, or even just telling somebody, like, yeah, when I went to grade school, like first grade or whatever, the bus I rode on had a CRT TV installed at the front of it, and the bus driver would play Pokemon as we were driving home for school.
I mean, Pokemon's been going on so long that they'd say, "Oh, CRTV, that's old," but I love Pokemon.
Well,
and then
would you install like a TV in a bus anymore? Kids would just look at their phones.
Yeah, fair.
That's my point with it, at least. But yeah, man, I had that bus driver for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. I think by the time he left was when, like, it was an icy day and we're going down this hill, and then the bus starts to slide, and he shouts, "Hang on!" as we go over the curve and just splatter a sign. Like, I think it was a speed limit 30 miles an hour sign, and he just slams into it, and then you get to see it, like, slowly fall down and hit the ground. Like, other kids at school were talking about, like, yeah, I think you guys actually dragged that sign to school that day. Like, underneath the bus, it got stuck.
Nice.
I also like how this mafia guy, he also brought a big hat, or this crime guy also brought a big hat at the end of his scenario here, just like all those guys that were hanging out in the Soul Battler quest. I guess that's just the crime virus.
Also, Lan, such a naive, trusting kid.
Okay.
I'll give up on crime. I'll be a good guy.
Look, okay, he has nowhere else to go. He's cornered, and he has surrendered. Like, that's good enough for Lan. He can walk right out of here before the officials come in, and the guy's like, never mind, you'll never take me alive, and they gotta put him down. Like,
yeah, anything
could happen.
Isn't there a quest in one of these games about someone who does exactly that? Oh, right, you caught me. I promise I'll give up.
In Battle Network 3, there's a payday loan lender or something like that who's like, yeah, I lent money to a guy, and he hasn't paid me back. I know he's got payday coming up here, so he can repay my loans. And then you have to chase this guy down where he's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll totally pay back. Before he, like, skips out on you and tries to leave, so you have to chase him down repeatedly to get him to pay the loan shark back.
Yeah.
So, there isn't that level of violence going on, but still. Anyway, support chip. This lady doesn't tell us what she's asking for here, but I just want to lay out what she's asking for here, alright? Attack plus 30. A unique chip you get from a purple mystery data, which is, like, extremely important for combos. Get an A, which you get for trading a bunch of chips throughout the game. This is the only place to get an A outside of chip trader shenanigans. Bubble Wrap Q. You get it from the Sky 1 Bug Frag trader where it costs 48 Bug Frags. You can also get it from the chip order, but still. Recover 80H, also from the chip order. Discord S, AC/DC area virus. So, like, 2 of those, not too bad. But the other ones? Are you sure about this, lady? Are you sure?
Yeah, with these 5 chips, I could put up a hell of a fight. Just give me, some of the best and or most unique support chips possible.
Yeah, so thank you all for coming out to watch this episode. I'm going to turn this in at a later date for its HP memory, but until next time, have a nice day.
See ya.